I want to start with a truth that has quietly shaped countless lives. The most painful betrayals rarely come from enemies. They come from people who once had access to our trust. A dishonest business partner, a manipulative friend, a deceptive coworker, or even a person who appeared kind, loyal, and genuine at first. The damage often feels shocking, not because the warning signs were completely absent, but because they were misunderstood, overlooked, or hidden beneath a convincing performance. Most people believe they are good judges of character, yet psychological research has repeatedly shown that humans are far less accurate at reading others than they think. In fact, many of the qualities that make someone appear trustworthy on the surface can have little connection to their true character. Confidence is often mistaken for competence. Charm is often mistaken for honesty. Attractiveness is often mistaken for goodness. A warm smile, strong eye contact, and polished communication can create an impression that feels real, even when it is not. This is one reason intelligent, successful, and experienced people can still be deceived by the wrong person. The reality is that human beings are naturally wired to make quick judgments. Our brains constantly search for shortcuts to help us decide who is safe, who is reliable, and who deserves our trust. While these shortcuts can sometimes be useful, they can also lead us into serious mistakes. Some of history's most skilled manipulators were not trusted because they looked suspicious. They were trusted because they appeared trustworthy. That difference matters more than most people realize. Hidden beneath everyday conversations and ordinary interactions are subtle clues that reveal far more than words ever could. These clues often appear long before a lie is exposed, long before a relationship falls apart, and long before someone's true intentions become obvious. The challenge is knowing where to look. In this video, you will learn how to recognize the behavioral patterns that reveal character before trust is given away too easily. You will discover why first impressions are often misleading, why certain personality traits create dangerous blind spots, and how small everyday actions can expose someone's true nature more accurately than grand promises ever will. You will learn how trustworthy people behave when nobody is watching, how manipulators reveal themselves through predictable habits, and why consistency is one of the strongest indicators of genuine character. Some of these insights are rarely discussed, yet they can completely change the way you evaluate relationships, friendships, partnerships, and even casual encounters. Most importantly, by the end of this video, you will understand a powerful principle that many people learn only after painful experiences. People reveal themselves through patterns, not performances. The individuals who deserve your trust are not necessarily the loudest, the friendliest, or the most impressive. They are the ones whose actions remain consistent over time. So stay with me until the very end, because the final lessons may completely change the way you judge character and help you avoid mistakes that can take years to repair. Welcome to the channel. If you're interested in psychology, human behavior, and learning how people truly think and act beneath the surface, make sure to subscribe and join us for more videos like this. Let's begin. Before you trust what people say, pay attention to what they do when there is absolutely nothing to gain. This is one of the most reliable ways to read character. Most people can be generous when there is a reward waiting for them. Most people can be polite when an important person is watching. Most people can appear caring when they need approval, status, opportunities, or attention. The real test begins when those rewards disappear. Human beings naturally adjust their behavior according to the situation. That is normal. But beneath those adjustments lies a deeper layer of personality that becomes visible in ordinary moments. A person may speak respectfully to a wealthy client and then immediately become rude to a waiter. They may act friendly toward a manager and then dismiss an employee with impatience. They may treat influential people with warmth while ignoring strangers completely. These moments seem small, but they often reveal more than long conversations ever could. When someone treats people differently based on status, they are showing you that respect is conditional. They are showing you that their behavior changes according to what they can receive from others. Many people miss this because they focus on how someone treats them personally. But during the early stages of any relationship, most people are on their best behavior. The smarter approach is to watch how they interact with people who cannot benefit them in any obvious way. Psychologists have long observed that behavior in low-reward situations often reveals authentic values. When there is no audience, no praise, and no advantage, people become more natural. They stop performing. This is why a simple interaction with a stranger can tell you more about character than an impressive speech about kindness. Notice whether someone says thank you to service workers. Notice whether they become impatient over small mistakes. Notice whether they speak to people with basic dignity, regardless of their position. Someone who consistently respects others when there is no reward attached is often demonstrating genuine character rather than social performance. On the other hand, people who reserve kindness only for important individuals may be revealing a hidden belief that human worth depends on status. There is another reason these observations matter. People rarely change their moral standards suddenly. The person who casually disrespects strangers today may eventually disrespect friends tomorrow. The person who constantly looks down on others may eventually look down on you as well. Many relationships begin with admiration and end with disappointment because one person ignored behaviors that were visible from the beginning. The clues were present. They simply seemed unrelated at the time. Character tends to leave traces everywhere. It appears in routine conversations, casual interactions, and seemingly insignificant moments. Now shift your attention from actions to words. Specifically, pay attention to how people talk about others when those people are not present. This can be one of the clearest windows into someone's mindset. Every conversation contains information, but some information is hidden between the lines. A person may believe they are describing someone else while actually revealing their own attitudes, insecurities, and habits. Listen carefully when someone discusses former friends, former partners, coworkers, relatives, or acquaintances. Do they constantly gossip? Do they seem energized by sharing negative stories? Do they attack people's character instead of discussing behaviors? Do they always place themselves in the role of the innocent victim while everyone else becomes the villain? These patterns deserve attention because they often reveal deeper psychological tendencies. One of the most interesting concepts in psychology is known as projection theory. Projection occurs when people attribute their own feelings, motives, or behaviors to someone else. This does not happen consciously in most cases. The person genuinely believes their accusations are accurate, yet they may be revealing more about themselves than about the target of their criticism. Someone who constantly accuses others of dishonesty may struggle with honesty themselves. Someone who repeatedly complains that everyone is selfish may be revealing their own self-centered tendencies. This does not mean every criticism is projection. People can certainly identify real flaws in others. The important point is that recurring accusations can sometimes act like mirrors. Watch for patterns rather than isolated comments. Everyone complains occasionally. Everyone has difficult experiences with certain people. That alone is not a warning sign. The concern appears when every story follows the same script. Every former friend was toxic. Every previous partner was terrible. Every employer was unfair. Every family member was impossible. Every conflict becomes proof that the world is against them. At some point, the common factor in all those stories deserves examination. People who never accept any responsibility for conflict often carry that same mindset into future relationships. If they cannot acknowledge mistakes from the past, they may struggle to acknowledge mistakes in the future. There is another subtle detail worth noticing. Observe how people react when discussing the success of others. Some individuals can celebrate another person's achievements sincerely. Others immediately search for reasons to diminish those achievements. They may claim the successful person was lucky, dishonest, connected, privileged, or undeserving. While there are times when such explanations are valid, constant negativity often reveals envy, insecurity, or resentment. These emotions may not directly predict betrayal, but they provide insight into how someone views the world. People who cannot appreciate the success of others often carry hidden frustrations that influence many aspects of their behavior. Words reveal mindset. They expose assumptions, beliefs, attitudes, and emotional patterns. But there is an even deeper level of analysis available. To understand who someone truly is, you must observe consistency. Trustworthy people tend to be predictable. Their values remain relatively stable across different situations. Their principles do not disappear when circumstances change. Manipulative individuals often struggle with this kind of consistency because their behavior is designed to achieve outcomes rather than reflect genuine beliefs. Notice how someone behaves around different groups. Are they respectful with one group and dismissive with another? Do their opinions change dramatically depending on who is present? Do they present themselves as one person in public and another in private? Everyone adapts socially to some degree. That is normal. The issue is not adaptation. The issue is contradiction. When values shift constantly according to convenience, reliability becomes difficult to predict. Someone may claim honesty is important while regularly bending the truth. They may claim loyalty matters while speaking negatively about friends behind their backs. They may claim integrity is essential while making excuses whenever integrity becomes inconvenient. Behavioral scientists often view consistency as one of the strongest indicators of future behavior. The reason is simple. Human habits tend to repeat themselves. While people can certainly change, meaningful change usually requires awareness, effort, and time. In the absence of those factors, existing patterns continue. This is why repeated behavior matters far more than promises. Words can be crafted carefully, promises can sound convincing, intentions can appear sincere, but patterns reveal what people actually do when life unfolds naturally. Many individuals become trapped by potential rather than reality. They trust the person someone could become instead of the person standing in front of them. They focus on promises of future behavior while ignoring evidence from present behavior. This creates disappointment because future actions are uncertain, while present actions are observable. If someone repeatedly demonstrates inconsistency, believe the pattern. If someone repeatedly fails to follow through on commitments, believe the pattern. If someone repeatedly contradicts their own stated values, believe the pattern. Patterns often tell the truth long before words do. As you become more skilled at observing consistency, another important signal begins to stand out. Small lies. Most major betrayals do not begin with dramatic acts of deception. They often start with tiny distortions that seem harmless. A slight exaggeration here, a small false story there, a convenient excuse, a modified version of events designed to create a better impression. Many people overlook these moments because the consequences appear insignificant. They assume the lie was too small to matter. Yet small lies can reveal important information about someone's relationship with honesty. Pay attention when someone tells stories that become slightly more impressive each time they are repeated. Notice when details change depending on the audience. Observe whether they regularly exaggerate accomplishments, experiences, or challenges. Watch how often excuses appear when accountability becomes uncomfortable. Small acts of dishonesty often serve a purpose. They protect image, avoid responsibility, gain approval, or secure advantage. The behavior may seem minor, but it reveals a willingness to distort reality when doing so feels beneficial. Psychologists sometimes discuss what is known as the foot-in-the-door effect. In simple terms, small actions can make larger actions easier later. This principle applies to dishonesty as well. Once a person becomes comfortable telling minor lies, bigger lies may feel less difficult. The psychological barrier weakens. What once felt unacceptable gradually becomes normal. This does not mean every person who tells a small lie will become seriously deceptive. The point is that repeated dishonesty often develops progressively rather than suddenly. Consider how trust operates. Trust is built from countless small moments. Reliability in small matters creates confidence in larger matters. The opposite is also true. Unreliability in small matters creates uncertainty about larger matters. If someone lies about trivial things, you are receiving information about how they manage truth under pressure. Many people dismiss these clues because they focus exclusively on outcomes. If the lie caused no immediate harm, they assume it is irrelevant. Yet character is not measured only by consequences. It is measured by choices. Many people ignore small lies because they seem harmless. That can become expensive. Not necessarily financially expensive, emotionally expensive, relationally expensive. Time can be lost. Opportunities can be lost. Trust can be lost. The smallest warning signs often appear long before the biggest problems emerge. This naturally leads to another powerful indicator of character: boundaries. Few things reveal respect more clearly than the way someone responds when they do not get what they want. Boundaries are simple. Sometimes they involve saying no. Sometimes they involve requesting space. Sometimes they involve declining an invitation. rejecting a proposal, or protecting personal limits. Healthy individuals understand that other people have the right to make choices. Controlling individuals often struggle with this reality. Watch what happens when someone encounters resistance. Do they accept the answer calmly? Do they respect the decision even when disappointed? Or do they immediately begin applying pressure? Some people respond to boundaries with guilt trips. Others respond with manipulation. Others become angry, offended, or resentful. The reaction matters because it reveals how they view relationships. People who respect boundaries usually recognize that trust requires freedom. People who violate boundaries often view relationships as tools for getting what they want. Notice how pressure appears. It is not always obvious. Sometimes it arrives disguised as persistence. Sometimes it appears as emotional guilt. Sometimes it takes the form of repeated requests after a clear answer has already been given. The specific method matters less than the underlying attitude. The question is whether the person respects your right to choose differently than they prefer. Researchers who study interpersonal relationships have found that boundary violations frequently predict future controlling behavior. The reason is straightforward. Boundaries protect individual autonomy. Someone who consistently ignores boundaries may also ignore other forms of personal freedom. They may feel entitled to your time, attention, energy, decisions, or emotions. These tendencies rarely emerge all at once. They often begin with small tests, small requests, small pressures, small attempts to push limits and see what happens next. Pay very close attention to how someone behaves when they hear the word no. That single moment can reveal patience, maturity, empathy, entitlement, insecurity, self-control, and respect all at once. Respect becomes most visible when someone does not get what they want. Anyone can appear respectful when life is going their way. The deeper test begins when desires are blocked, expectations are challenged, and outcomes become uncertain. That is where character starts speaking the loudest. For a while, a person can control what you see. They can choose their words carefully. They can present a polished version of themselves. They can appear calm, patient, understanding, and mature. But eventually, life applies pressure. Plans fail. Expectations are challenged. Mistakes happen. Criticism appears. Frustration builds. Embarrassing moments arrive without warning. And when pressure enters the picture, masks often begin to slip. This is why one of the most powerful ways to read people before trusting them is to study their emotional reactions. Character is not revealed when everything is comfortable. Character is revealed when comfort disappears. Most people pay attention to how someone behaves during good times. They notice charm, confidence, friendliness, and humor. Those qualities can certainly be valuable, but they tell only part of the story. The more important question is, what happens when things stop going their way? How does a person react when criticized? How do they respond when someone disagrees with them? What happens when they become frustrated? What happens when they feel embarrassed in front of others? These situations create emotional pressure, and emotional pressure often reveals traits that remain hidden under normal circumstances. Take criticism as an example. Nobody enjoys being criticized. Even emotionally healthy people may feel defensive at first. That reaction is normal. What matters is what happens next. Does the person listen? Do they consider the possibility that the criticism might contain some truth? Or do they immediately attack the person delivering the message? Some people cannot separate feedback from personal attacks. To them, every criticism feels like a threat to their identity. Instead of examining the information, they focus entirely on defending themselves. They blame others. They change the subject. They become angry. They create excuses. Over time, this pattern becomes dangerous because people who cannot handle criticism often struggle to improve. Growth requires self-examination, and self-examination becomes difficult when every uncomfortable observation is treated as an enemy. Disagreement offers another valuable opportunity to observe character. Healthy individuals understand that reasonable people can hold different opinions. They may argue passionately, but they do not automatically view disagreement as disrespect. In contrast, emotionally immature individuals often see disagreement as rejection. The moment someone challenges their viewpoint, they become hostile, sarcastic, dismissive, or defensive. Their goal shifts from understanding to winning. Instead of exploring ideas, they focus on proving superiority. This can create serious problems in relationships because every difference of opinion becomes a conflict rather than a conversation. Watch closely when a discussion becomes uncomfortable. Notice whether someone remains respectful while disagreeing. Notice whether they allow others to speak. Notice whether they become aggressive when their beliefs are challenged. These moments provide valuable information because relationships inevitably involve differences. Nobody agrees on everything. If a person cannot handle small disagreements respectfully, larger disagreements may become far more destructive. Frustration reveals another layer of character. Life constantly creates frustration. Delays happen. Technology fails. Traffic appears. Mistakes occur. Expectations are disappointed. These moments seem ordinary, but they create ideal conditions for observing emotional control. Some people experience frustration without losing respect for others. They remain patient even when irritated. They solve problems instead of creating new ones. Others react very differently. A small inconvenience triggers disproportionate anger. Minor setbacks produce emotional explosions. Their mood changes instantly, and everyone nearby feels the consequences. This does not mean trustworthy people never become angry. Anger itself is a normal human emotion. The question is how anger is managed. Emotional regulation is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to experience emotion without becoming controlled by it. People with strong emotional regulation can feel disappointment, frustration, embarrassment, or anger while still maintaining perspective. They remain responsible for their actions even when emotions become intense. Psychologists consistently identify emotional regulation as one of the strongest predictors of healthy relationships. The reason is simple. Every long-term relationship eventually encounters stress. Challenges are unavoidable. Financial difficulties arise. Misunderstandings occur. Unexpected problems appear. If someone loses control whenever stress increases, those patterns eventually affect everyone around them. The ability to regulate emotions creates stability. It allows trust to develop because reactions become more predictable and less destructive. Embarrassment provides another fascinating test of character. Most people dislike feeling embarrassed. Nobody enjoys making mistakes in public. Nobody enjoys being corrected in front of others. Yet these moments often reveal important personality traits. Some individuals can laugh at themselves. They acknowledge mistakes and move forward. Their sense of self-worth remains intact. Others react with intense defensiveness. They become hostile. They seek revenge. They blame others. They cannot tolerate any situation that threatens their image. The deeper issue is not embarrassment itself. The deeper issue is insecurity. People who rely heavily on external validation often struggle when their image is challenged. They become preoccupied with protecting appearances rather than accepting reality. This can create trust problems because maintaining image becomes more important than being honest. Anyone can appear calm when life is easy. Anyone can seem patient when nothing is going wrong. Anyone can look emotionally mature during pleasant conversations and successful moments. Stress creates a different environment. Stress removes comfort. Stress removes certainty. Stress exposes habits that usually remain hidden. This is why pressure reveals character more reliably than comfort ever can. As you continue observing emotional reactions, another important pattern begins to emerge. The relationship between words and actions. Many people know exactly what to say. They understand the language of honesty, loyalty, kindness, respect, and integrity. They can describe their values beautifully. They can make inspiring promises. They can express noble intentions. Yet there is often a significant difference between what people claim to value and what they consistently prioritize. Trust grows from alignment. It grows when words and actions support each other repeatedly over time. The most trustworthy individuals rarely need to convince others of their character because their behavior provides evidence. Their actions reinforce their statements. Their choices support their values. What they say and what they do exist in harmony. Unfortunately, this alignment is not always present. Someone may claim family as their highest priority while consistently neglecting family responsibilities. Someone may speak passionately about honesty while regularly distorting facts. Someone may insist they value loyalty while betraying confidences whenever convenient. The contradiction itself becomes important information. It reveals a gap between identity and behavior. One reason people become confused in relationships is that they focus too heavily on intentions. Intentions can feel comforting. Intentions create hope. Intentions allow us to believe that future behavior will improve. Yet intentions are difficult to measure because they exist inside someone's mind. Behavior is much easier to evaluate because it exists in reality. Actions create evidence. Actions produce outcomes. Actions demonstrate priorities. Think about how people spend their time, attention, and energy. These resources often reveal true values more accurately than words. If someone claims a relationship matters deeply but never makes time for it, their behavior communicates a different message. If someone promises support but disappears during difficult moments, their actions provide information that words cannot erase. Human beings communicate constantly through behavior. Every choice sends a message. Every repeated action reveals a priority. This is why psychologists often emphasize observable behavior over verbal declarations when evaluating trustworthiness. Words can be influenced by social expectations. Actions are influenced by actual priorities. A useful principle to remember is this: never trust someone's intentions more than their behavior. Good intentions may exist. People often mean well. Yet trust should be built upon evidence rather than hope. Evidence comes from consistent actions. Evidence comes from repeated choices. Evidence comes from patterns that remain stable across different situations. Once you begin focusing on behavior instead of promises, another trait becomes critically important: accountability. In many ways, accountability separates trustworthy individuals from dangerous ones more clearly than almost any other characteristic. Everyone makes mistakes. Every person eventually says the wrong thing, makes poor decisions, misjudges situations, or hurts someone unintentionally. Perfection is impossible. The real question is what happens after the mistake occurs. Can the person admit they were wrong? Can they apologize sincerely? Can they accept responsibility without creating excuses? Can they learn from the experience? These questions matter because accountability reflects self-awareness. It reflects emotional maturity. It reflects a willingness to face reality even when reality is uncomfortable. Notice how people respond when evidence clearly shows they made a mistake. Some individuals acknowledge it directly. They do not enjoy admitting fault, but they do it anyway. They understand that personal growth requires honesty. They recognize that responsibility is not weakness. In fact, responsibility often demonstrates strength. Others respond very differently. They deny obvious facts. They shift blame. They create elaborate explanations designed to protect their image. They search for external causes rather than examining their own decisions. Every mistake becomes someone else's fault. Every failure becomes someone else's responsibility. This pattern often emerges because of what psychologists describe as defensive ego protection. The ego wants to maintain a positive self-image. When information threatens that image, some people become defensive. Instead of accepting responsibility, they protect their self-concept by rejecting accountability. The problem is that growth becomes impossible without accountability. A person cannot correct mistakes they refuse to acknowledge. They cannot improve behaviors they deny possessing. They cannot learn lessons they insist do not apply to them. Watch carefully when someone apologizes. A genuine apology focuses on responsibility. It acknowledges impact. It demonstrates understanding. A false apology often sounds different. It contains excuses, blame, conditions, or attempts to minimize the situation. The words may resemble an apology, but the mindset remains defensive. One of the strongest red flags in any relationship is a person who never admits fault. Not occasionally. Never. Every conflict becomes someone else's responsibility. Every problem has an external explanation. Every criticism is unfair. Every disappointment is caused by another person. This matters because people who never admit mistakes often repeat the same harmful behaviors. Without accountability, there is little motivation for change. The cycle continues because the underlying issue is never addressed. As important as accountability is, there remains one final test that quietly determines almost everything else. A test that many people ignore because it requires patience. A test that exposes deception, confirms integrity, and reveals character with remarkable accuracy. That test is time. Time is the ultimate lie detector. One reason people become vulnerable to manipulation is that they rush trust. They make important judgments before enough evidence exists. They allow emotions, chemistry, attraction, excitement, or admiration to accelerate the process. Yet trust was never meant to develop instantly. Trust was designed to grow gradually through repeated observation. Manipulative individuals often understand this. They know that familiarity creates comfort. They know that emotional intensity can create the illusion of closeness. As a result, they frequently attempt to accelerate connection. They share personal stories very quickly. They create feelings of special understanding. They encourage emotional dependence before trust has actually been earned. The relationship begins to feel unusually close in a surprisingly short period of time. This can be exciting. It can feel meaningful. It can feel rare. Yet genuine trust requires more than emotional intensity. It requires evidence collected over time. Healthy people generally allow trust to develop naturally. They do not force it. They do not rush it. They understand that character must be observed across different situations. Good behavior during 1 week proves very little. Good behavior during one difficult year reveals much more. Time allows patterns to emerge. Time reveals consistency. Time exposes contradictions. Time tests promises. Time applies pressure. Time creates opportunities for accountability. Time reveals emotional regulation. Time uncovers priority. Most performances can be maintained temporarily. Very few can be maintained indefinitely. Charm can create a powerful first impression. Confidence can attract admiration. Intelligence can impress people quickly. But time examines deeper qualities. It asks whether behavior remains consistent. It asks whether values remain stable. It asks whether words continue matching actions long after the excitement of first impressions has faded. This is why patience is one of the most underrated tools for reading people. Time quietly collects evidence. Time removes uncertainty. Time reveals whether someone's character is genuine or merely presented. And the longer you observe, the harder it becomes for reality to stay hidden. At the end of the day, the biggest mistake people make is believing that trust should be based on feelings alone. Feelings are powerful, but they are not always accurate. They can be influenced by charm, confidence, attraction, and emotion. A convincing smile can create comfort. A good story can create connection. A strong first impression